Hey guys, welcome back. This is episode 11 of New York and Beyond with me, Christina Kremidas. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about building a personal brand and achieving greatness at a young age. So stay tuned. We're covering everything here. Welcome back, guys. Thank you so much for being here for another episode of New York and Beyond. This episode is going to be incredible. We are going to be speaking with Yahaira Jacquez, who is a bilingual reporter and producer at Reuters based in New York City. She covers market-moving news and produces videos on the biggest stories of our time. Her work has been published in the Washington Post, the New York Times, the BBC, and beyond. Yahaira is truly changing the journalism industry through innovation and a fresh perspective. You are going to know her name soon. I swear this girl is going to be a household name. So we are honored to have her on the show with us today. Quickly, before we talk to Yahaira, I wanted to remind you guys to make sure that you're subscribed to my channels. This really helps me to bring more videos like this to you guys. So if you like the content, please subscribe and please share. The mission of New York and Beyond is to build a community of like-minded people around the idea of continuing growth, opening our minds, learning new things, and having this show serve as your weekly dose of knowledge on something that you didn't know before. I think it's just so important, especially during the challenging times that we're in, to be meeting and speaking with new people. And this is a way that we're doing that, but we're also growing a supportive community of our listeners, which has just been so incredible. So I do hope that you'll subscribe and share this show with your friends and family or with anyone who you think might benefit from it. So with that said, let's talk to Yahaira. Hi, Yahaira.
Hi, Christina. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today. You have such knowledge that you are going to share with us, and I can't wait.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, thanks again for being here. And I did briefly mention who you are, a little bit of what you're doing to the audience before bringing you in, but I would love if you could take the opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience, let them know what you're doing, what your mission is.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm a journalist for Reuters in New York City covering business and politics. And what that looks like in my day-to-day is I produce video segments and I anchor news segments on news stories across the US. Those videos then reach millions of people worldwide. So I take my job very seriously, and informing the public and telling stories accurately is always something that I strive to do with my work. And I would say that my mission as a journalist is more than to just inform. I think what I've sort of thought, especially on this journey, I've been a journalist for about 5 years now, and I really want to make people care about the stories that I tell. I want it to just be more than, oh, that terrible thing happened to that person somewhere. I hope it never happens to me. I want people to care about the stories that I tell. And you do that by introducing people to the faces of the people who are suffering or dealing with a certain dilemma. So that has always been my mission, to make people care about the stories that are happening all around us.
Thank you for that. And that resonated with me. Sometimes I'm a little bit horrified at the things I hear on the news, like as I'm just doing my daily stuff. Like I may not be like watching the TV, but I'll have it on in the background. And they'll like mention something horribly catastrophic, and we're like unfazed. We're like, oh. And I'm like, how are we okay with hearing that and not being completely traumatized? But it's interesting that you notice that and you try to help things hit home more.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. And I think, I think that there's a place for that type of news. Like when something immediately happens, you just want to get the story out. So when Texas was dealing with these blackouts a few weeks ago, it's about telling what happened in that moment and what people are going through. But then, following a few days after that, then you start to hear about the stories of the people there and what they went through and what they're currently going through. And I think that as journalists, our mission is to, like I said, show the faces, show what's happening to people, because the news story is one thing, but how it affects people is how it ends up resonating with you and with others, and it makes them care. It makes them reach out to their loved ones who are there, or friends, or ask, are you okay, or donate to causes that will then help whoever is a victim in a situation. So I think we play a huge role in not just, like you said, telling the news and making everyone scared and upset, but also showing, okay, this is what's unfolding, and this gives you an opportunity to help because you are understanding the situation, you're feeling compassion towards others. So I think you're totally right. I think a lot of people feel that way about the news, and that's where we come in as journalists. And like I said, we tell the stories of the people who are going through it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about taking action. And that's something that I've mentally tried to train myself to do more than just being a bystander. Like, if there is a way that I can take action, I do try to make it a point to. And I love that you're bringing that out in people. So I know that, you tell stories, you cover stories, you're following stories, but your story is very impressive. And I was wondering if you could share your story with our audience. I know that you mentioned how grateful you are to your parents who are Mexican immigrants. And if you could just give us a little glimpse into your story, how you found yourself here. And I'm hoping that you're also willing to share your age with our audience too, because you're so young. And I think that it's just makes it that much more inspirational to see how, articulate you are, how impeccably presented you are, and the fact that you're achieving such greatness and it's at such an early age.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm totally happy to, tell everyone my age. I'm 27 years old. I've been in the journalism industry for 5 years now here in New York City. And like you said, yes, I am the daughter of Mexican immigrants who came to the US in their 20s and didn't have much. My mom started as a garment industry worker in Los Angeles. My dad was a truck driver for a long time, and they built their lives here in the United States with us. And my mom has worked in a department called the Child Life Department in a hospital in Phoenix, and she's worked in that department for 20 years now. And she basically takes care of the children in the hospital's psychosocial needs. So she'll, do crafts with them. She talks to them about their procedures, and it's an extremely rewarding career, but she's been able to build her life here in the United States doing that, something that she would have never had the opportunity to do back in Mexico. My dad now owns his own trucking business. So he was a truck driver for a long time. And so growing up and seeing my parents work as hard as they did and knowing their story, I've always looked up to them as people who show us that the American dream is still possible, and that me as their daughter, I have a responsibility to carry that on and to move forward and to do even more than they did. So, I studied really hard in high school, did, try to do very well in college. I stayed in state because I got a full ride scholarship to any state university that I wanted in Arizona. And then I decided to go to the journalism school at Arizona State, and ended up going there and had so many opportunities and was able to do so much and really find what I was passionate about in journalism, and was able to get so much real world experience, which is something that is critical in the journalism industry. And that basically set me up to then intern at Reuters. I interned at Reuters my senior year of college. And Then when I was out of college, I got my first job in New York City at Reuters on the social media team. So, it's been a fantastic journey, and to think back to my parents and everything that they sacrificed, it just feels so fulfilling to know that they're proud of me and that I'm on a path towards, achieving something that they set out to do. They wanted their kids to be able to do, be able to pursue the career that they wanted. So that brings me so much joy. And to be able to do this every day and enjoy it, it's honestly, I feel so fortunate.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I am wondering, it's funny because I wasn't necessarily raised in an environment where I was around other children who had immigrant parents so much as I got older and became an adult, especially being married to someone who's the son of immigrants. It really, you realize like it takes a lot to pick up and come to another country. And I'm wondering if seeing your parents build a life here, do you feel like being able to see that happen has given you an appreciation for this country and the opportunities you have here, and just a sense of drive that you think, maybe some people might not see?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it touches on a certain part of my life. So I grew up in Peoria, Arizona, which is a suburb outside of Phoenix. And my area was very middle class. I went to actually a really good high school there, public high school. And one thing that I noticed is that me and all my friends, and I kind of gravitated toward the other Mexican Americans, and all my closest girlfriends were all very much like me, daughters of immigrants. And we all were very driven. We wanted to go to college. Our parents were also very strict, so that also has something to do with it. But we were very ambitious, and all of us now have our careers. One of my best friends is studying to become a lawyer. Another one of my friends is like a top accountant at a very big company. And I think one of the things that we had that which for me is very strange, is that the other people that we went to high school with, whose parents maybe did go to college or didn't, but we're not children of immigrants. They didn't have that same, like, we came from the same place, but they didn't have that same drive, and a lot of them didn't go to college, or a lot of them didn't go to college, which I found just to be astounding, because for me it was like, this is the best opportunity ever to have an education, to be able to study something that I love, to not have to do the work that my parents did growing up. Like my dad, I grew up not seeing my dad very often, only on the weekends, because he was a truck driver and he was driving all night. And, I saw the sacrifices they made and how hard they worked. And so I thought to myself, and they always told me, they were like, if you don't want to work the way we did, like, do the type of work that's just labor intensive, go to school, find something that you're passionate about and just dig into that. So I think it really does make a difference. And I think that there are just so many different types of people, and there are people that are, whose parents did go to college, and that or whose family members, grandparents, great grandparents have always, had that tradition of going to college and have had that opportunity. But it has been very strange to me to see the people who I grew up with and who had the same opportunities as me not, grab them the way I sort of did. And I was like, oh, I have to do this. I have to go to college. I have to be successful. So it's been an interesting case study for me. And I always think back on that. But like you said, I mean, it does give you a sense of appreciation for this country, and it almost feels like I can't waste it. I can't waste this opportunity to be a citizen of this country, to be able to get a college degree and start my career. So I'm very appreciative, and I think more than maybe the average person, because I did grow up with immigrant parents who told me about their countries, and it is very different, and the opportunities are not the same.
It's so interesting to hear you say all of these things. And of course, we're not making generalizations. It's like, everyone has their own story and their own process and their own mentality. But I do think it's interesting. I mean, and even growing up, my parents were educated and they did well for themselves. And I'm not going to lie, I thought that it was going to be easy. I really did. Like, I was like, oh, well, if you stay the route, if you, stick to the plan, you'll do really well. And I was like, it's kind of a rude awakening as an adult when you're like, oh, like my parents must have been working harder than I realized. And they did have opportunities. And I realized as an adult, like, okay, well, if I don't want to have a very like regular career experience, if I want to do any better than average, you have to work so hard. And it's kind of interesting to see because I personally thought I did think it was going to come easier, honestly.
Yeah, no, I hear that from a lot of people too. And, it's sort of funny. I've seen these videos on TikTok where people are sort of comparing how it was to get a job back then to now, and how now it's like, oh, I have a bachelor's, I have a master's, I have a doctorate degree, I did this and that. And they're like, nope, join the rest of the crowd. I think that we're living in a time where it takes so much more to succeed. I don't know why, but it does feel like it just takes an immense contribution to actually be successful.
Yeah, I know we've spent more time on this topic than we planned to, but I always see different perspectives as just so critical to be aware of. And, I just thought that it was, certain things are just very, very eye-opening. So, I feel like it's important to, to touch on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Now back to reporting. I feel like it must be so hard to be a reporter today, especially with today's demand now for getting clicks. I noticed that news seems to feel more sensational than ever. How do you feel about the integrity of journalism today?
Yeah, I completely understand that question. And I think that a lot of people over the past few years have probably taken a more critical eye and have been more critical about news. And what I do have to say is that I think the media and journalists themselves don't set out to be sensationalist, but I think that the business model sometimes leads us in that direction, because our business model, like the more viewers you get, the more clicks you get, the better the advertising dollars that ends up coming into your newsroom, because that is what we've built this industry on. So it's just, I think that as journalists, we try to do the best reporting. We try to do the best interviews. We try to choose topics that we think are critical for people to know, or that we think people should know. And I see it firsthand with myself and all the other journalists that I work with, that we are very dedicated to this field, to this job, to keeping the public informed. And I know, maybe not everyone is that way or carries that sense of ethics of what journalism should be. But I think for the most part, all of us are individuals that are just trying to do our jobs. And sometimes, like with any industry, what comes from above the food chain, so to speak, is that, pressure to tell certain stories or, do a flashy headline. But I think for the most part, I am very optimistic and proud of the work that I see many journalistic organizations doing. But I do think I totally understand where you're coming from, because like I said, it is an industry that is built on getting the views, getting the clicks, and that can, sometimes distort the mission. But I think that as journalists, if we keep our eyes set on what we got into this for, which is to inform the public, make people care about stories that are important, then we have a good path. But it's very difficult to achieve all of that under this business model. We need clicks, we need views, we need all of these things that as journalists, like I didn't set out to be a journalist for that. It was to inform the public. So that criticism isn't great. So I think that as long as we kind of set our eyes on what it should be, then hopefully we can get to a point where it can be a little bit less, like you said, sensationalist.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. And I do agree. I think that it's a tough industry. I mean, it really is. It also does come down to the integrity of the individual journalist too. I think that does make a big difference. And my example is as a real estate agent. I mean, I don't know if there's an industry with a worse reputation, to be honest. I mean, when you think of real estate agents, I'm kind of horrified at what some people think of. And, one of my goals is to elevate the industry and present myself as a professional and an honest person. And I feel like you're doing that as well in the reporting industry. And it comes down to the individual perspective, I think, of the journalist, like you said, but also it's very competitive. And what drives success are the results of those headlines, the clicks that you're getting now that everything's digital. It's just crazy. And I think another point that's interesting too is that I think consumers are waking up to it. I really do. I mean, I think that there was a time when everyone just took the news for face value. Like, okay, what they're telling me is the truth. I mean, I'm watching the news. This is the real thing. And now with so much internet reporting that is operating with less integrity than a company like yours, I think people are way more wary about what they hear and what they click on and what they choose to support and give their eyeballs to. So I think that might be a good thing for the future.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I think that people are kind of, seeing their power. I think that with the internet, it's just such a huge place. The only problem is when you start to see people who act like reporters but don't have that, credibility, or don't understand the way the industry works, the ethics of the job. I mean, these are things that are drilled into our heads from the time that we start on this journalistic journey, being impartial, trying to tell not both sides of the story, but trying to tell all sides of the story and how different things are being viewed, and not missing, certain parts that would provide context to the story. And so I think that's when it starts to be a little bit problematic. And you have seen that in the past, especially with political reporting, of course, because politics are so touchy. But I think that as journalists, that's where our integrity is just paramount, because that's what we can always go back to, is having those ideals and having those values as journalists, and trying to use those as we do our reporting. That's what makes us, different than maybe the regular person that's out there just writing stuff on the internet because it, serves a certain viewpoint. But I think you're right. I think people are finding their power, finding their voice. And, if you're doing it with a good goal in mind, then, I personally welcome it.
Everyone has a platform now, right? If you have a Facebook page, you have a platform that you can share your opinions. And it's funny because I'll be scrolling through my feed and I'm like, there are some people that have been given a platform that should not have a platform. It's so funny. It's like terrible, but it's just, it happens. You see posts from like all different kinds of people. And, sometimes you just need to like silence the posts from specific people because it's just too crazy. The other thing too, that I feel like we're crazy with is, like resharing articles that you haven't even read. I feel like a lot of people reshare articles that are like a crazy headline and then the article itself is like complete nonsense, but you're sharing it and you're like getting really heated about something that might be like completely fictional because the article is total nonsense. It's like just pure clickbait. Sometimes even from websites that are like sarcasm websites. And you're like, what's happening? Like people are going nuts.
It's scary. I mean, I'm not going to say there aren't repercussions that are far reaching. I mean, we've seen the explosion of, certain groups that I feel like 5-10 years ago just weren't even in our orbit. And now it's like these, different groups have sort of, because of their online followings, have just, come to the forefront, and we all, we know about them now. We see them in headlines, and you're right.
To reiterate too, like we're not talking about articles from your, company. I feel like you guys operate with a level of integrity that wouldn't be contributing to that problem, but it's out there. So thank you for all of those perspectives too.
Yeah, definitely.
So one of the reasons why I had to have you on this show is because I believe that you are going to achieve such greatness. And I just can't wait for the moment 10 years later where, it's going to be like, wow, like you did this interview on New York and Beyond 10 years ago. Like, I just can't wait to see where you go and the greatness that you achieve. You've won at least 6 awards in the past few years. And again, you're so young, and these are no participation trophies. You were 2018 front page award winner at Reuters and a 2017 Reuters Journalist of the Year. How have you found so much success this early?
First of all, I want to say thank you. I feel like your words just made me feel so nice inside. That's so kind. And thank you for recognizing my work and, these accolades that I've gotten. I feel very proud of them. I would say that I've been fortunate enough to be in positions where I've been able to do a lot of innovative work early on, which I think for me, as a journalist, has been just fantastic, because a lot of times journalists will get accolades later on when they've done groundbreaking reporting, a huge, timely, newsworthy interview. And as a young journalist, you don't really get those opportunities yet. So what I've been able to do is I've been in these positions where I've been given an assignment and have been told, do this in a way that is innovative, tell this story in a way that is different. And I've gotten those opportunities, and that work has then stuck out to people. It has made people think about the way we tell stories. And I want to say that because the 2 awards that you mentioned were for my work as my first job at Reuters, which was to produce live content on Facebook. So I don't know if you or your viewers remember when Facebook was doing a lot of Facebook live content. So I was fresh out of college. I had gotten my first job at Reuters, and I was doing this work. And what I did was, me and another young teammate of mine who was also young like me, we basically equipped Reuters journalists, and we have around 2,000 journalists around the globe. We told them about this initiative that we had on this Facebook Live platform. We set them all up with profiles, and every single day we had Facebook Live interviews. We had segments done by our Reuters journalists around the world. So we had segments from Hong Kong. We had a segment in Venezuela when there was all of this. There was a lot of protests in the streets because people were very upset at the way that the government there was handling certain things. And I remember we equipped this journalist there with the ability to go live on Facebook. And at one of these protests, she was able to go live and interview people that were saying, we're hungry, like we don't have anything. The government hasn't supplied us with anything that we need at this moment. And so being able to do that, and being able to, for me, to produce those segments really stuck out to people. And it made people think, oh, wow, that's a different and very cool way to take people somewhere in a very, non-TV produced sort of way. They were just journalists out doing their work, and were then able to tell the story from the scene, from where it was happening. So we got a lot of accolades because of that reporting. And it was basically the brainchild of me and someone else who, both happened to be young journalists very early on in their career, but wanted to tell stories a different way.
That's so interesting. Thank you so much. I mean, and that's one of the things that we like to bring to light on this show, is really the concept of leveling up together, growing together as an audience. And, I find it really important to put people in touch with this audience through these shows who are able to show, this inspirational approach to working really hard and being different and being innovative. And I just love the concept of what we're doing on this show, which is creating a community together of people who are like-minded and interested in doing the very best that they can. So you've exemplified this, which is why I just feel like you're a perfect person to have on. And again, I'm so thankful that you're here with us today.
Thank you. It's really awesome. And it's been great to, kind of show people how it gets done. Like you said, like you see these awards that someone has won, but you think to yourself, how did they do it? And if I'm able to then, share my story and tell you how I did it, then maybe it would help the next person who's thinking about their career and, doesn't know whether to go a traditional route or maybe do something a little bit different. And that's what I chose to do. I remember having, a few job offers, and a few were kind of the typical route. You go to a small news station in somewhere in Texas, and you become an on-air reporter. And this was a completely new form of storytelling, this social media position that I had gotten at Reuters. And I was like, why not? I have the chance to do something great. And it really paid off. And so I would tell anyone listening, and it doesn't matter if it's in journalism, but if you think that something could lead to something greater, and it's maybe not that traditional path, take it, because you never know when doing something different is going to catch people's attention. Because if you're doing the same old thing, it's like everything else, and it doesn't click with people. If you're doing something different, you're at least going to get their attention.
It's so true that you say this, and I appreciate hearing you say it so much. And I think it's so important to just remind each other. I mean, that's really like what we're here for, is like, I did not create this saying. I heard it somewhere and I can't remember where I heard it now, but it's like, success is where action meets opportunity, or something like that. And it like sounds corny, but it's so true, because I feel like a huge part of becoming successful or stepping out of the box that you were in is just being able to recognize when an opportunity presents itself, and having the confidence to act in that moment and just take it and grasp onto it and do something with it. And again, just bringing people like you to the audience. We're down to earth, real people. And, you know, there are plenty of people in their 20s and 30s that are making, you know, 6, 7, 8 figures even, but we may not know them personally. You know, we know it's out there. We know there's so much success that can be grasped, but we may not have any personal friends that are making $1 million, like in their 20s, right? So it's like, and of course also like money isn't everything. There are so many different ways and expressions of success, but we see most people on a very standard path. We're encouraging each other, like as your friends, you know, there is more that we can achieve.
Yeah, I think you're right. Just having that in your orbit. I've had friends reach out to me, or people that went to my college, and they're like, now, you know, you inspire me to, you know, go to New York City and follow my dream of being a journalist, or things like that. And it means so much to me. But you're right. It's like almost like having that awareness that someone close to you, or someone that you know, someone who you've heard that's just a regular person, is doing something that can do wonders for someone else who maybe didn't see themselves in that position because no one ever told them that they could do that, or they didn't see anyone that looked like them, you know, go out and do that, or, you know, go out and make a lot of money, be able to make a lot of money. So you're so right. And I think that's why this podcast, this community, and just in general, people that are out there creating communities, I think that's why this is so powerful, because of everything you said. There's a power in that.
Thank you so much. It's just incredible. And the potential of people when we're put together is just so immense. So, you know, it's definitely something so special. Are there any characteristics that you feel you have that others don't? And what do you believe makes you stand out and produce award-winning work?
I think it all goes back to the mission that I mentioned earlier during this episode. And my mission has always been to make people care about a story. And as I look back, even during college, when I was doing journalism work, I see that in my reporting and the things that I did. I remember, I did stories. I went to school, like I said, in Phoenix. I did stories at the border many times, about immigration, about trans-border trade between the United States and Mexico. And I remember there was one specific story that really sticks out to me, and that I ended up winning an award for in college. And it was about the water crisis that people living in reservations in Arizona and also in other places, specifically the Navajo Nation, they don't have clean running water, and how that was affecting one young family who had a daughter that had a disease where she was, you know, not able to, because of those issues, wasn't able to live with her family on the reservation. So she had to live in a care facility or at a hospital sometimes, and the family would go back and forth to see her. And so I think that when you approach stories caring about the story, and, you know, caring about the subjects in a way that's still removed from the story that you're trying to tell, because you never want to impart yourself as a journalist. But I think that caring about your stories and making sure that every word is accurate, it's fair, and it tells a story in a way that is not going to be misconstrued. I think that all of that really helps to tell a story that people are going to resonate with and that they're going to understand. I mean, any story that I do in my day-to-day, I try to do that with. I try to put as much care as I can in each line and each word that I do. And, you know, then when I'm out and I'm reporting and I'm finding people to interview, I try to connect with them. I try to, form a bond where, maybe they feel like they're talking to a friend, not someone who's just coming in there and, trying to get a story out of them. But, I care and I want, and this is why I want to tell your story. And I think approaching your work in that way, not with the goal of getting an award, but just with the goal of, telling someone else's story or telling a story that's going to resonate with people and that people are going to care about, going into it with that mentality, I think is what makes the difference.
Thank you so much for that. I'm wondering, how do you get to choose, but also how do you choose the stories that you want to cover? And is there any specific type of news that you would like to eventually be known for covering? Or is it best to stay broad when it comes to this industry in terms of what you choose to report on?
Yeah, those are actually really good questions. And I'll start with the first one. So when I go in every day, there is typically, like we talked about before, there are so many stories going on in the world right now. During the Trump presidency, I would say that it was definitely a flurry of news, but these days there is still a lot going on. It seems like people have sort of gotten used to just the intensity of all the news stories that come our way, and that just really hasn't subsided in a way that's substantial. So when I go in, I typically have a story that is assigned to me. So if the president is doing something significant on a specific day, then I'll cover that. If there's another milestone, so the other day we reached 100 million vaccinations, I will do a video report on that. And basically what that encompasses is that we get video from all sorts of places, because we are a news agency. So our company has people that go out and film stories. They go out and film the B-roll, the interviews, everything that you see. And what my job is as a reporter and a producer is to take all of the information that comes from those interviews, that comes from what the CDC is saying, that comes from what the president is saying, and turn that into a story and a news package that you can then listen to or watch on the internet, on the web, on a website, or some of these stories also end up in broadcasts all over the world. So because of the news flow, I am typically given a story, but there are moments in which I am able to pursue a story that I find really interesting, and I will basically put a pitch together, and that pitch then goes to my boss, and she says, I like that story, but you need maybe this angle too, or how about you focus on this part of the story instead of what you presented. So that also comes into the equation. And typically those stories will be something just like a little bit either quirky or just even more serious news topics, where I'm actually able to go out and interview people. I mean, now under these conditions, I'm not, but be able to do Zoom interviews and coordinate getting video from those people that we interview. So it is kind of a complicated process. I hope that I broke it down in a way that's you can understand, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yes, absolutely. So what is your vision for the future of journalism?
One of my hopes for the journalism industry, and I think that this applies to others as well, is as a newsroom, I would love for us to better represent the communities and the people that we are covering. And I think that we do that by creating an environment in our newsrooms that is more diverse and not just of backgrounds and race. It's also about class diversity. It's about diversity of thought. It's about, representing the communities that you serve, because if you don't, you're missing out on stories that, you just aren't aware that should be covered, because you have those blind spots, because you're not accurately representing the people who you serve. And so I do hope that in the future it just becomes a more diverse place where people can really represent those that they are covering, because it's very difficult to tell a story if you don't really understand the community or where someone is coming from. So I think that is where we're lacking right now, and where we can definitely make strides and become better as journalists, because we're more accurately representing the people that we say we serve.
Absolutely. So true. I mean, someone can be as well-intentioned as possible and still miss stuff too. I mean, I agree with it. The fact that it's so important to make sure that the people in your circle and especially even in the executive positions have the most well-rounded view possible.
Yeah. I think that's you hit it right out of the ballpark. It's so true.
Yeah. What advice would you give to a young professional who's looking to be taken seriously and excel in the business world?
My advice to young journalists and to anyone really across the board is to read and to be as knowledgeable as you can about the given subject that you want to cover as a journalist, or about your industry. Be very in the know. And the reason why I say that is because by reading and being well informed, you will produce better work. You will do your work. For me personally, as a journalist, I have noticed a difference in, the way I used to do stories back then, where I would kind of read the story once it was assigned to me. And now it's like, oh, I know the story. Let me write it, and let me tell it in a way that, I'm able to do it in my voice and the way that I want to craft the story. And I think that what that also does is it gives you a knowledge base that gives you an expertise, and you then become an asset for your news organization, or you become an asset for your company, because you've developed an expertise on a subject. You're not just doing your job at that point. You are an asset. You are someone that knows the ins and outs of a particular subject, a way in which you do a certain work. And so I think that, being very knowledgeable on what it is you're covering or what it is you do is just something that everyone can practice. But it's something that really changed my career, because you become immersed in this thing. And so when someone asks you about it, you're like, oh, I already know. And here's let me tell you 3 things about it and why it's interesting. And that's always an asset as a person, when you are viewed as the person to talk to about a certain thing.
Thank you for that. And I do think you completely nailed that response. I didn't know that you were going to say that, but I completely relate. And I love how you described it. And I feel like that's something that it's ironic, because we have so much information at our fingertips, and we're learning less than ever, I almost feel like, because we know that we could always Google something. So, and it's interesting that you say this, because it's the same advice that I give new agents. A lot of agents will ask me for advice, or if I'm training someone that's working with me, it's important to know, obviously, what you're working on, like the back of your hand, but really not just so that you can regurgitate it, because then you're not adding any more value than someone's Google on their phone can. It's like, why do we need to be here, right? But when you internalize it, you are able to explain it to someone else with your personal spin on it. And now you are valuable.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And you're so right. It's such an obvious thing, but with so much information at our fingertips, I almost feel like people have this like broad understanding of a topic or of a, you know, everyone sort of knows a little bit about everything.
About everything. I was just going to say the same thing, right? Everyone is almost like, you know, a little bit about everything, but is there anything that you would consider yourself an expert in?
Yeah, and that's where, like I said, that's where the money comes in, because if you're viewed as an expert in something, other people are going to want you, and you're going to want to be, people are going to want you to speak. People are going to want you to, help them with a certain thing, and that's so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say is the biggest challenge that you've faced as a journalist?
To be honest, sadly, I think it's being taken seriously as a young journalist. And I don't mean that from my, being taken seriously by my bosses or coworkers. I mean by the people who I work with to get the story. So different interview subjects, or when I'm trying to, work with people to, coordinate an interview, or do anything that's like more external. I always find, not always, but I find sometimes that people kind of have this view of, oh, I mean, why are you sending her, or why is she doing the interview? Like, she's this young person. And I think that while that I have felt that way before, and sometimes it's been communicated, I think that that's always driven me to just be as prepared as I can, to be as knowledgeable as I can going into an interview, or when I do my reporting. It's just pushed me at the end of the day. And you're going to have your doubters. You're going to have the people that are going to think, oh, she's too young to be doing this, or I can't take you seriously. You're too young. You're always going to have those people. And that's fine. Those people can view it in that negative light, instead of saying, oh, wow, she's so young and she's done so much. Like, that's amazing. So you're always going to have those people that are that way. And that's fine. They can be that way. But what that's pushed me to do is just to be better, to, really prove myself, and to then at the end of that, exchange, they can be like, oh, wow, she was really professional and she did a great job. And that's all you can do.
Yeah, I love that answer so much. It's like there's always going to be people who have closed minds, and there's always people who are going to come up with whatever their assumption is about you, whether it's age or anything else. It could be that you have blonde hair and they think you're stupid because of that. Honestly, it could be anything. And I love how you said, just shake it off and use it as a tool to help remind yourself that you're going to be the best at what you do. You're going to come prepared. And I totally relate, especially being in an industry myself in real estate, where your age does make people assume that you have some kind of like more life experience, or seen more transactions happen, and they think that someone older might do a better job. And it's true, like, to those people, you just have to say, like, okay, well, I can't change my age, right? I mean, if you're going to pass up on an amazing person because of that, then that's unfortunate, but I can't change your mind. And I love how you phrase it. It's just like, okay, they're always going to be that way, and you're just going to be the best at what you do. And of course, I'm sure that there's going to be a time later when everyone is like, oh my God, like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't expect that about them,
Yeah. And it just goes back to this idea of just controlling what's in your power, like, that's what's in my power is not how others view me. It's what I choose to do with my abilities, with my mindset. That's in my power. And to supersede their assumptions, that's all I can do.
It's completely true. It's completely true. Thank you so much for that. Where do you see this going? Do you have a larger path for this?
I would say that For me and my journalism career, I think that what I want to do is build a brand around myself. Like try to, and that's not to say that, I'm the journalist, I should be the star. It's more like a creating an image of yourself so that when people see you, or when people, approach you or see you on social media, they know, oh, that's Yahaira. She does this. She enjoys doing that. She loves covering these types of stories. She's an expertise on that. And so I think that's what, being able to do that is very powerful, because then you create opportunities for yourself. You become more visible to others. That way, are they looking for a bilingual journalist who's able to tell stories in English and in Spanish? Or are they looking for this type of journalist? Oh, I can already think of someone. I think, and that's in all of our powers. And I encourage anyone to do that as a professional, is to create this brand around yourself. And like I said, not like you're the star, but just so that people know that when they see you, they have an idea of who you are, because you've told them, you've demonstrated it in your social media, or by the stories you cover, or the work that you do. And ultimately what that does is you create value in your persona and who you are, and people seek you out for that. And so I think that as any person in the professional world or beyond, it's just paramount these days to do that, since we are, especially now more than ever under these conditions, we're more online than ever before. So I think that that's so important, and that it also, it's great for you. And it, opens you up to opportunities, because people know exactly who you are and what you're all about.
Amazing and such valuable advice. And the only thing I could possibly think to tack on is just not to be afraid to like shout what you do over and over again, like as loud as you can, because it's shocking how difficult it is to actually communicate, what you do and start to become known for something. It's actually pretty crazy. I've had people that don't know that I'm a real estate agent from my online presence. And I'm like, get out. Like, I feel like I can talk about it so much that I'm scared you're going to unfollow me, let alone the fact that you don't know, like, right. And I think that's also too, it's so interesting to just remember as you're doing this and as you're building this brand.
So true. It's so hard to break through these days. I mean, people are just getting, so many alerts. They follow so many different people they do know, people they don't know. So don't don't worry about, being too loud, or, telling people over and over again. It's so important to do that. And, if people are going to unfollow you, okay, like let them unfollow you, but you got to do you got to show people who you are. And if that means saying it over and over again, then that's what you do.
So true. So true. Thank you so much for your wisdom, Yahaira. You are so cool and so awesome. I'm genuinely so happy that you were able to do this episode with us. I mean, this has been priceless to hear this from you.
Oh, I really appreciate it. If I've been able to provide any value to anyone, that just makes me so happy. And if anyone ever has any questions, like, I'm online everywhere, so you can definitely find me.
Yeah.
But it's been great to share who I am and what I bring to the table.
Thank you so much. And that was going to be my next question for you, is if you could tell our audience where they can find you, your Instagram handle, your website, and anything else that you would like to tell them.
Yeah, definitely. So you can find my information at yahairajacquez.com. And my Instagram is Maya Jacquez. Maya is my nickname. So it is Maya and Jacquez, Jacquez. And I talk a lot on Twitter. I really enjoy the platform, as do a lot of journalists that I know. So my handle is Jacquez _. And you can always find me tweeting about different news subjects and also some of my perspectives on the news. And besides also being a journalist, I also am a food entrepreneur. So I recently started a food company, and it's based off of a family recipe that my grandmother used to make me. And our company is called the Pinole Project, thepinoleproject.com. And our first product just came out a few weeks ago. It's an oatmeal made with pinole, which is an ancient superfood that's made out of ground corn, and chia seeds, another ancient superfood, which is more familiar in the US. And it's just an oatmeal. And we began selling on Amazon and on our own website this month. So it's been really exciting and just something else to do under our current situation. Kept me busy.
How amazing. Thank you so much for mentioning that. I will provide links to your Twitter, Instagram, website, as well as the project that you have. I will link everything so it is accessible for our audience. But wow, congratulations on that. That's so cool.
Thank you so much. It's been such a journey, and along with everything that I do in my normal day-to-day, it's a lot of work. But when you have a purpose and you find joy and value and fulfillment in what you do, it's all good.
Totally. Thank you so much for your time, especially with how busy you are. I appreciate it so much. I'm sure the audience really appreciates it. And also thank you for making yourself a resource to the audience. Guys, speaking directly to the audience, you can feel free to reach out to Yahaira with any questions that you have at all. Thank you so much again.
And I want to thank you. I mean, this was such a great conversation, and I felt like you were just able to understand me in a way that felt really comfortable and great. And I appreciate, being given this opportunity.
Thank you so much. This is honestly, I feel lucky and so grateful to be able to do this and just, to be able to talk to someone like you, and especially during a time when networking doesn't happen anymore. I mean, we're stuck in our homes. So I'm just so grateful to be able to have you now in my circle, to be able to support you and have you support me and the whole entire audience. I just love this. I just am so happy that we're doing this and that you're here for it. And just honestly, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you too. And for your kind words. I appreciate you.
Guys, I hope you loved this episode. Yahaira brought us so much wisdom and amazing advice. Reminder that if you like this content, please share it with your friends and family. Please make sure that you're subscribed, and please get in touch with me. I'd love to know more about you guys, and if there's any professionals that you'd like for me to bring onto the show, you can get in touch with me via email. I link all of my contact info in the description here, and you can also follow me on Instagram. My handle is Christina.Kremidas. Thank you guys so much again for being here. Stay tuned for the next episode. These episodes go live every Tuesday, so be sure to look out for them. I'll see you then.